Hello and welcome to another episode of Peeling Onions. Today is our first episode that is actually on camera, so it's the first time we'll be able to sit and talk and have a good general time. And this is also the second time and will be a continuous effort to make Colin Perry a semi-permanent co-host on the show. We'll try to get other guests and stuff in to not only debate, but to just talk about the general bills that are going on and the stuff that's happening right now. But our first topic of the day is simply the government shutdown. It's a few days. I believe, as of yesterday, it was 3 at the date of recording. I think now it's going to be like 2. Until this is the longest government shutdown, mostly over the wall. Basically, Trump wants funding for his wall. $5 billion, I believe, is the number as of now. And so, should Trump keep going with this, or should the Democrats keep going? Who should crack, and who do you think is going to crack?
So, my personal belief is that the wall should be built. I do believe it would help the country more than it would harm it, because it would help slow down drug trafficking, human trafficking, and illegal immigrants. With illegal immigrants, obviously, you can come into the country legally. I just don't want you coming in illegally. So I do agree with the wall there, but the thing about a government shutdown, it shuts down all non-essential services. So like parks and other stuff. And there might be some major stuff that actually affects people. Like maybe government workers get laid off, and that's unfortunate. But I think it is worth it in some degree to shut down the government until the Democrats cave, but the Democrats might.
You mentioned the workers, and I know there's been a lot of heated debate on that because there are people who aren't getting paid now because they've been furloughed for now.
Yeah, they've been laid off.
Mm-hmm. And I know a CNN reporter, I can't remember his name, it was like Josh or John or something like that. Don't quote me on that, on his name, but he came in and he was talking to Trump in the office, and he said, should you, go ahead and stop the government shutdown, sign the funding bill, and just so we can get these people back into, working jobs instead of not, because they're fired and paid. But, you can't look at this without saying, well, if the Republicans cave and they sign the spending bill and it doesn't give them their wall, when are they going to actually get their wall? Because the Democrats are going to negotiate for it. They've shown this. They've shown this for 2 and going on 3 years. So unless the Republicans force the Democrats to give them the wall, there's really no way it's going to get built. And I agree with the wall being built.
Yes.
It will stop, as you mentioned, human trafficking, drug trafficking, illegal immigration. And that would help our citizens. We're not saying that, that would help our safety. That we're not saying you can't come in, it's just saying that you are being forced to come in legally, which is not a arbitrary new idea.
The wall to me is pretty much saying, you please use the door legally.
It's like asking somebody to not smash in your windows to come into your house. Please walk through the front door.
Yes. Don't smash through the window and say, hey, can I live here? Sure.
Yeah, then just say sure. With that, obviously the spending bill being the question, we are moving into now the raising taxes. The Pelosi, the Pelosi, the Democrats aren't any new faces in the idea of raising taxes. So, who will this tax be raised for? You see mixed ideas. Some say the middle class needs raises as well. Some say no, we don't want to mess with the middle class. But who's really going to get their taxes raised? And is this just another hidden taxation on the middle class? Because as you see with Obamacare, that was recently ruled unconstitutional. But that's not the topic. You saw that was a huge tax on the middle class because they're fundamentally paying taxes. The lower class isn't.
Yeah.
And they're not this high class, millionaires who have the money to afford those raising premiums and rates. But the middle class is who's actually stuck with the bill. The people who have invested wisely, but maybe haven't made it big time, and now are being taxed for almost everything they have. And why do they want it? What is this going to fund? Because that's what taxes does. It funds the government. What do they want to fund?
So with me, taxes. It's about balance, pretty much, in my mind. I don't agree with the fair tax. I don't agree with that. But About raising taxes on the middle class. I mean, the middle class always struggles enough. They already struggle enough. The upper class, they might get annoyed by the taxes, but usually most of the time,
It's
if
usually
they're
just
rich
extra
enough,
paperwork for
yeah,
them,
it's just extra paperwork, or the lawyers are just, maybe they have to spend less because the rich have ways of getting out paying taxes using lawyers, and just finding legal loopholes.
I mean, you've seen Trump say it himself that he, he admitted in an interview. Obviously, he tries to pay as little in taxes as possible, and that's
Exactly.
I mean, that's everyone.
That's
not-
everyone. That's everyone.
Yeah, it's not some new arbitrary idea, but
but the
he's
rich- the rich, they do have the money to hire lawyers that
can find
can
ways.
find ways
Yeah.
because very smart and really good lawyers. And also with the middle class, I do strongly believe that most of the government funding comes from the middle class. So it's pretty much your average middle class American worker funding the government and funding everything else that's going on in this country. Everything public.
Not only that, but the middle class is the ones who are, they make up the majority of our country.
Yes.
Yeah, I think as the most recent one was like 55%, something like that for the percentages of the classes. The upper and lower classes is not really. It's a significant part, but it's not a majority by far. The middle class holds a supreme majority. It's over 50% of America. So,
Yes.
when you're saying we're going to raise the taxes on these corporate, people, it doesn't really solve the issue of the middle class, because and government funding in general, just because that isn't a significant enough part to warrant charging them that much more.
Yeah.
So what is your opinion, while we're on it, of the corporate taxes, not just because we don't want to be stuck in the middle class forever?
So the corporate tax, last time I heard it was 35%. That was years ago. I don't know if it's the same today, but at least used to be 35%. And when you have corporate taxes that high, it drives companies away to America. I mean, American companies are moving their headquarters to Dublin, Ireland, just because Ireland's pretty much a tax haven. And that actually cheats the government out of their own funding. So if you raise taxes enough on corporations, it will drive them away, and you lost that money. You might get a boost for a little bit, but then they go away and you lost that funding. So keep it at a modest rate. I do believe that corporations should pay taxes,
Yeah,
but not a crazy amount.
Yeah, we're not supporting tariffs on on this show. We're not saying that, hey, tariffs are the way to go. We're not, we don't want taxes at all. But when you're saying some people are wanting the tax rate, I think it's what's her face? She just got elected, the socialist girl, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She's wanting the wealthiest of our top. I assume 1%, but she might once actually looking at what the 1% rate is. I believe it's only like 400,000, 500,000 to be in the top 1% of America. But when she may divide it more to that, maybe like the top 0.5%. But she wants that at like 60 to 70%. That's the rate she's wanted. She's wanted to go with that 60s, the 1960s style of taxation, and that's
Pretty
just
much really high taxes.
That's ridiculous. You can't take half of somebody's stuff. Like, it's literally like me barging into your house and saying half of your stuff that let's say you've built 500 wooden beds, and I walk in and I just say I'm taking half of those. Well,
I mean, look
why?
at the American Revolution. I mean, we overthrew the British government here because of a small tea tax, because we were not being represented in Parliament. Yet today, there's a crazy socialist calling for a 70% tax, and Democrats are like all for it.
Yeah, it's getting to the point where you can't really distinguish between a Democrat and a socialist, because they're just it's starting to
become just one thing.
They used to be two separate people going along their lines, and now it's almost side curved where they're almost the exact same thing.
I mean,
they align some areas.
Pretty much, if you have the center margin right here, all the way here is just commie. You're a red commie. Over here, you're alt-right. You're pretty much a white supremacist
Anarchist.
or anything like that. Anything in here is pretty much where I stand around, and that's where I believe you should be near the middle. You can be slightly polarized.
I don't
Not
know if you
much.
can. I mean, this isn't the point of what you're saying. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Stay semi-independent. You can lean either side. You can lean.
You
Okay,
can lean
I
either
prefer
side.
some, a little bit more government control than not, but still, for the most part, saying that I'm fairly independent. But I do disagree with your definition of what like what a leftist would be, like a commie, and what would
Yeah. But, like,
because what it
modern
comes
day-
down to is government control. Is like how much does the government get to control, and in when you say that's the alt-right, that's racist, all them who don't want black people to have rights and such.
Yeah.
The only way you can do that is with more government control. You can't say the government's stepping away, but we're going to punish all the black people with the government. You either have to have you have to have more government for that to happen. So I disagree with your definition there, but I understand the point. And with that, we want to move into our next. This goes along with the funding. This is the federal funding. The topic is for abortion, but it is the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 20. It's the funding bill. It was a 241 to 190 vote in the House. It did pass. Obviously, you can see that passed. It failed to include the $5 billion for the wall. And it also essentially eliminates Trump's Mexico City policy that was signed in one of his first signings, actually, in January of 2017. The Mexico Policy Act, just to give you some reference, is the policy that disallows U.S. federal funding for non-government organizations that provide abortion, counseling, or referrals. So, and it also includes foreign non-governmental NGOs to certify that they will not perform or actively promote abortion as a method of family planning. Agree or disagree, first of all, with the concept of the Mexico City policy?
With the Mexico City policy, I do agree that Mexican abortion clinics shouldn't get funding from the federal government. I think
That includes all foreign. It's just called the Mexico City policy. It includes all foreign.
Yeah, all foreign. And even abortion clinics domestically, I believe, should not get government funding because personally, I am pro-life. I believe that abortion is pretty much the same thing as soon as the baby is born, you're stabbing it in the neck. It's pretty much the same thing. It's murder.
Yeah, we talked about that on the last episode. We were still in the podcast format, but yeah, we showed that kind of that. I gave my opinions on the abortion topic. So that's not what we're on about. But so I do agree that federal funding needs to be gotten rid of and needs to be out of. I personally agree that the government needs to step out of a lot of healthcare today because that's what's driving up the premiums. When Obamacare was enacted, I believe it was like 121%, maybe 114, but it was somewhere in that area. The premiums were raised, and obviously I don't like paying more.
I mean, what I'm bewildered by is that the government doesn't even support clinics that try to or help women have babies, women that physically cannot have babies, they're infertile. And yet the government's all for funding abortion clinics, which it doesn't make sense.
Okay, so just to give a quick overview, the government shutdown, agree or disagree with, let's just say, the Republican side, the Democrat side of things. We'll go with the Democrat side of things. Do you agree or disagree with the Democrats as far as the government shutdown goes?
I disagree with the Democrats mainly because they're trying to fund programs that shouldn't be funded.
The raising taxes, we talked about that. I assume disagree as well with the Democrats.
I disagree with the raising taxes, yes.
Okay, the federal funding for abortion, agree or disagree with it? The Consolidated Appropriations Act. Do you agree? Well, just that part of it, the funding for abortions, do you agree with that part? Because that's what we talked about.
Funding for abortions? No.
Okay, and that's not just because of abortions. It's not, but that is a big reasoning to it. I think the government needs to a big step out of just Medicare in general. Now we got that. We want to move on to the new gun laws that possibly can be enacted. This one, the one I've heard, the one that I've heard about, and the big one is, just it would require background checks on nearly all firearms, including those sold at gun shows over the internet, and there would be limited exceptions, except for including law enforcement officers for guns transferred between close family members. So there's not a lot of new stuff coming in.
Yeah.
The only real new one that maybe this would prevent a little bit more is the transfer between family members and law enforcement officers. But buying them at a gun show, they get a background check. There's an episode of Steven Crowder, if you don't know who that is. He runs Louder with Crowder. He did a video over him going to gun shows and asking them if he could buy a gun just outright. He didn't walk up and say, can I buy this gun right now and leave? It was, can I buy this gun? And they started asking him for his information to do a background check. And, you'll see that. I'll link it in the description below. But, and he essentially shows that, that was already going to happen anyway. The gun shows one debunked. They sold on the internet. I believe, I can't remember if I think they sell it to they send it to your nearest gun shop. So, the nearest gun, I'm not sure if they would consider them a gunsmith or shop, but your nearest gun retailer, they send it to them, and then you have to prove that, it's you, and you still have to go through all your background checks. So, again, not a lot of new stuff there. But between close family members is pretty much really the only new one. Do you agree, disagree with, the background checks before maybe per se you're my son and I give my old shotgun to you?
With background checks, I think if you want to legally possess a firearm, you must go through a background check because, we don't want guns to fall into the hands of criminals, but obviously they're still going to find ways to find guns even if you require them to go through a background check or not. They can always go to a black market. So that's where background checks fail, but I always think that to legally possess a gun, you must go through a background check.
Yeah, I don't disagree, but just with passing a new whole gun laws act that I've said before, it doesn't really add anything.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with background checks before purchasing a firearm, but they're not really stopping anything. And even in the you see these leftist posts about it, even they admit what is this really gonna solve? Because we're not banning anything. We're just saying you have to go through a background check.
So I want to use a real life example here. So someone I know had a firearm, and he sold his firearm as a private seller to someone else. He later found out that person was actually a felon, a convicted felon, and should not have possessed that firearm. That's where I believe that you should have to put that person through a background check for you to legally sell that gun to him. And so the next time he sold a gun to someone, he actually took him to a gun shop and ran a background check on him to make sure that he was not a convicted felon.
But the big question again, with all these gun violence laws, the goal is to, what they say is that their goal is to save lives.
Yes.
Will it stop any gun violence? All you're saying is I have to. It's the same argument over and over that the leftists don't seem to want to hear, and it's the argument of if this isn't going to stop it, why are we restricting people who are law abiding?
Yes.
If this isn't somehow going to keep illegal guns off the street, then why are we punishing people with legal guns? It doesn't really, it doesn't solve anything because people with legal guns don't, it's like, I think I saw a recent stat. It's like 200 million of the 300 million guns in the United States are owned legally. So we need to figure out how to get those other 100 million, not how to restrict the other 200 million. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. And I do believe that the Democrat Party, their end goal is to ban guns altogether. But for now, when it comes to gun control, it should be limited. Obviously, you shouldn't have someone with a gun that shoots explosive bullets that can just punch a hole in the wall.
Why not?
Just a huge hole.
Why not?
Because one shot can literally blow off a limb.
Why are you saying that? Well, so why can
the
government have them?
Pretty much explosive bullets.
But why can the government have them?
Because it's a government. But
exactly. Well, because what is the point of the American people having guns in general?
Because only if the government has it, then it'll be harder for it to go through a black market. I'm talking about those extreme guns, very extreme. Why do you think private citizens don't have nuclear bombs? The government has nuclear bombs.
Why aren't we allowed?
Yeah.
That's the question I'm asking.
Yeah.
Why aren't we allowed?
It's mainly
if you
because of mass situations. That's why the government has put gun control on fully automatic weapons, and if you want to legally own one, you have to go through this extensive background check that can take a month from the FBI. And
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. Again, I'm not saying no background checks. I'm not saying that the government should have any place in gun sale.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is why are we restricting the American people from governments? Because the only point we have, the argument you hear is, that guns are for hunting. They're not for it's not mainly for personal defense. It's for hunting. It's for, and that's why you don't really need a fully automatic gun. But the real purpose that the founding fathers put this in place was so that we could fight a tyrannical government.
yeah, the Second Amendment by definition is that any weapon that the government owns, you can own.
And that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So if if we decide that the purpose is in this, we would have to have a Supreme Court ruling. The purpose of the American Constitution, the Second Amendment, is to fight a tyrannical government. Like the founding fathers self-admitted that that's the reason they drew it up.
Yes.
And that's the reason that they argued down to that last comma to ensure that the right of the people is secured. Then it shouldn't be a firearm that the government is allowed to own, that you as a personal citizen, a law-abiding citizen, should not be allowed to own. If you want an explosive round and you're not shooting somebody, shooting somebody out of, not out of personal defense, then why aren't you allowed to have it? Because let's say the government comes knocking on the door and they have explosive rounds. Why do they get to use it against you, but I can't use it against the government?
And you do have a point there, but obviously I haven't done enough research on the explosive rounds yet and how that can affect people.
That's not research on the explosive rounds. It's just, core concept of what are the limits of that extension of the United States, that interpretation of the United States Constitution. Because if we're saying that the government can have it, so can the American people, so that they can protect themselves in case the government tries to use it against them,
yes,
then we have to say that extends to all weapons. Now, I'm not saying I would personally get a nuke. I have no reason for one.
Exactly.
But it would almost just privatize personal defense, and, if per se nukes were allowed, not saying that they should be, but firearms definitely. But as per se nukes were allowed, you would just privatize your nuclear deterrent.
Yeah.
Because MAD, the Mutual Assured Destruction, it's used between, the U.S. and Russia during the Cold War.
Yes.
You nuke me, I nuke you.
Pretty much.
You die, I die. That's what's happening. So when we that's the same kind of thing, but between me and you. Instead of it being two countries, it's just two people.
Yeah. And with my theories on gun control, I do agree with gun control in a very, very limited way. Explosive rounds, fully automatics, and nuclear bombs. That's pretty much it. Anything else, you can own an AR-15. Personally, I think they're cool. You can own any other gun you want.
Looking to get one of those. Nothing's finalized, but that'll be fun. Next topic. Stayed on that one for a while, but I like that. We actually found an area where we may disagree.
Yes.
That's actually an area that I enjoy talking about because of that reason.
Yeah.
I love disagree, especially civil dialogue. It's always fun. But the next we're gonna move on to a segment that we're gonna just basically title our rebuttals. The onion rebuttals. This is where we're gonna really peel back some layers of different videos that may be floating around, different controversies that may be floating around that maybe aren't necessarily like a bill being passed that we can just review. So my personal one that I chose for this week, and it started for a little while ago, but you see a lot of videos coming out about it now. But Kevin Hart, the controversy with him hosting the Oscars. Now this one, I show a little bias because I'm a fan of Kevin Hart. He's a really funny guy.
He is really funny.
And
he's short and funny.
Yeah. And he jokes about that. He's willing to make fun of himself. He's a good comedian, and I enjoy listening to him. But he recently got into some controversy over some tweets 10 years ago. What's crazy is he's sent out over 40,000 tweets, and somebody went back 10 years to find tweets of him making fun of gay. He said the tweet was, "If I ever come home and see my kid playing with a Barbie doll house, that I will smash it over his head." Essentially saying, if I come home and my kid's gay, I'm gonna beat him. It was a joke. That's, that was it was a joke, but he did come out and apologize for it because he's changed.
He's forced to apologize.
Almost forced to apologize, but he personally believes he was wrong, and I'm not gonna argue with that. If you think you're wrong, I'm not gonna knock somebody for saying, oh, I'm not gonna make gay jokes anymore. It's not something that I'm gonna knock somebody for. But essentially he was meant to host the Oscars, and then somebody dug up the tweets, and those are now spiraling around. And he was actually forced. He wasn't forced to step down, but he didn't feel like he needed to apologize again for these comments. Like, he gave two comments that he had to release to apologize for those, 10 years ago. He apologized for those then. A movie with Will Ferrell, and now he's being forced to apologize again. So he apologized in a video afterwards, stepping down from the Oscars as the host, and he was, obviously heartbroken. You're asked to host the Oscars. The Oscars, one of the most watched series, show. It's technically a show because it doesn't air, It isn't just a one long, it's a series. So, you see that, and it's very saddening to see somebody have to step down. But he went on Ellen recently, and this is one of those areas where I happen to agree with her. Usually when she steps into a political sense, I don't typically agree, but this one, we can actually agree on. So she came on and she said, I think you've apologized enough. And she even brought in her own personal life. She is gay. If you didn't know, she's gay. But but so she brought him on, and she's like, I don't think you need to really apologize anymore, and we will play the clips actually right now.
I think it was right after I hosted the Oscars. We went to dinner.
Yes.
And we talked about you hosting the Oscars, that it was a dream of yours. You've always wanted to host the Oscars. I said you should host the Oscars. Then you get asked to, it must have been amazing when they asked you to host this year.
Unreal. There's a lot of goals that I have on my board. I got a vision board, and on that vision board is so many things that I want to do that I'll check off as they get done. And Oscars was up there. Oscars was one of the highest of highs, simply because there hasn't been a lot of African-American comedians that have been able to do it. I would have been the fourth. So to get the moment, when it happened, my first thought is I'm gonna ignore it. I'm gonna ignore it because it's 10 years old. This is stuff I've addressed. I've talked about this. This isn't new. I've addressed it. I've apologized for it. I'm not gonna pay it any mind. I know that I've addressed it. I know that I've apologized. I know that within my apologies, I've taken 10 years to put my apology to work. I've yet to go back to that version of the immature comedian that once was. I've moved on. I'm a grown man. I'm cultured. I'm manufactured. I'm a guy that understands now. I look at life through a different lens, and because of that, I live it a different way. So now, I'm kind of upset because these 10 years are just being ignored. They're being brushed past. These words hurt. I'm sorry. But either my apology is accepted or it isn't. Either I can move forward or I can't. But you can't grow as a person without mistakes. You don't know what perfection is unless you've experienced imperfection. So I don't know the perfect individual that society is now looking for. It's not me. I'll be the first to say it. I'm an open book. There is no perfect bone in my body. I have made several mistakes, and I embrace them all because I'm a better man today because of them. In this case, I just said I'm going to walk away because I felt like it was a conversation that was just going to continue and continue and continue. I would much rather say I'm sorry again and walk away.
Then we talked a little bit more. So I called the Academy today because I really want you to host the Oscars. I think that I was so excited when I heard that they asked you. I thought it was an amazing thing. I knew how important it was and how it was a dream. So I called them. I said, Kevin's on. I have no idea if he wants to come back and host, but what are your thoughts? And they were like, oh my God, we want him to host. We feel like that maybe he misunderstood or it was handled wrong, or maybe we said the wrong thing, but we want him to host. Whatever we can do, but for you to be the bigger man, for you to say, I understand. And to not pay attention, there are so many haters out there. Whatever's going on in the internet, don't pay attention to them. That's a small group of people being very, very loud. We are a huge group of people who love you and want to see you host the Oscars.
It's tough for me because it was an attack. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a coincidence. It wasn't a coincidence that the day after I received the job, that tweets just somehow manifested from 2008. Now, I don't know who follows me or who doesn't. I'm on social media every day. I got over 40,000 tweets. To go through 40,000 tweets to get back to 2008, that's an attack. That's a malicious attack.
And what you see in those clips is you see a man who's sincerely sorry for what he did, but sincerely trying to move on. And the media won't let him. And he feels attacked, you know. He even mentioned it in the video. He says, I feel attacked because somebody went back probably close to 25,000 tweets just to find something to rub dirt on me, to rub dirt on my name. And now I'm being forced to apologize again. So this topic made it to the main stage, made it to The View. I know. That's crazy. So they started talking about it, and you saw mixed opinions, you know. But one of them mentioned, I don't know their names. I'm not a consistent watcher. I just saw it float over to there, and I felt like it would be a good point to start. But you know, you see one of them say it was similar to the Kavanaugh case. That, you know, is there really no one better? And it's like, well, but in the same scenario, this is something that not only happened years ago, but in this scenario, somebody's actually apologized for over and over. And then another girl started talking and said, I don't think he's ever really apologized. And I'm a member of the LGTB, you know, whatever.
LGBTQ, RS, TUV, WX, Y, and Z.
Yeah, I'm not going to memorize all that. But, but, you know, and she's like, you know, I'm a member of this. And she's, you know, saying that he hasn't truly apologized for this. And it's like, oh, he did 8 years ago, but you guys don't seem to want to find that. Kevin Hart mentioned, he said, people are willing to go find the dirt, but they don't want to find my apology. The many times over I've apologized for this, and I find that this is, honestly, it is an attack on him. It's not, you know, and it's going to be, we're in such a culture to where if you say something 20 years ago, it's allowed to be brought up now as your actual point. People's minds change. He may have thought that joke was okay. He may have thought that joke was the funniest joke in the world. But that doesn't mean that now he thinks that is. And now he thinks that's okay.
I mean, pretty much just all water under a bridge.
Yeah, you know, he's apologized.
It's 10 years ago.
Yeah, he's apologized, and most sensible people say, yeah, he's apologized. It's fine. You know, most people forgot about it until it was brought up.
I mean, I heard about it. I'm like, okay, cool.
Yep, and so should he host? I think yes.
Personally, yeah.
You know, I don't think that's much of a question. And should he be forced to apologize? That's a little bit deeper of a question.
He shouldn't be forced to apologize. He should only apologize when he feels sincere about it.
Yeah.
He shouldn't just be like, I'm sorry.
I'm a big believer in that. You know, if you're not sincere about it, then why are you even apologizing?
Exactly. It serves no purpose.
And he started off like that during this most recent time. He was like, you know, I'm not going to apologize for it again because I've done that before. I've admitted I was wrong. And so I don't think he should be forced. If he feels truly sorry and that's where he wants to take his career, that's good for him. If he wants to go down that path, that's fine. You know, I'm not going to obviously try to stop him, and I don't particularly care, but I don't think he should be forced to apologize just because there's no real point. It's a joke. It's comedy. The comedy's supposed to be the one area where we can say whatever we want, and it's fine. You know, because it's a joke. It's banter.
I mean, if you get butthurt over things, I mean, if you're a white guy and you say something or a stereotype about black dudes, you're called racist. But if it's flip-flopped, it's really funny. I mean, I've seen that.
You know, that's what that actually brings us towards our next rebuttal. Colin, this is yours. I'll let you take over.
All right, so my rebuttal is a video from The Root called "Why Jesus Became Widely Accepted as Being White."
Let's
unpack
really
that
quick.
in quote.
For context, we want that we're going to really quickly cut over to that video and let you guys watch it in full. And so that we, because we want as much context as possible. So we'll cut over to that, and you guys can see that in just a second.
All right, so have you seen it? Have you seen there in the video? The Root is a YouTube channel, from what I see, mainly ran by black people, which is perfectly fine. It doesn't matter what the color of their skin is. But I've seen a couple of their videos, and there's one chick in particular that has been actually racist towards black or racist towards whites. And yes, both blacks and whites can be racist. Whites have certainly been racist to blacks, and blacks have certainly been racist to whites. It goes both ways. And they're asking the question, why is Jesus portrayed, I can't say words, portrayed as white?
Words are hard.
Words are hard, it's English. In most forms of art depicting Jesus is white. And they say it has dangerous implications. And let me find my spot here. So, they're depicting Jesus. Jesus is white. Even though the Bible doesn't state his skin color, that is how Jesus is portrayed in Western art. The reason why he's white, the reason why he is white in those art pieces is because Christianity boomed in Europe as many artists who are white themselves painted Jesus as a white dude.
This is exactly what I was going to say. When you have people who are European and they think, they think Jesus is the perfect them.
Yes.
Then they're gonna think he's white because I'm white and he's the perfect me. So he would be a white guy like me. But,
White people back then, they thought as themselves more of a people, more as a united people, and saw other races as inferior.
And I'm not gonna unjustify.
And so did everyone else.
Because historically, he was probably as we see many Israeli people. You know. He's gonna have a very deep tan. I don't. I'm not.
He's gonna be more Hebrew.
I'm not gonna say he's white, but that doesn't. But somebody painting him as white isn't necessarily this big racist attack on colored people on the Middle East.
I've seen paintings where Jesus is as white as this piece of paper here.
Yeah, it may be inaccurate, but that doesn't mean it's a racial attack on somebody.
Exactly.
That's where you're gonna be wrong.
So yeah, this is carried over today because of this long history of Jesus being portrayed as white, and that America came from British descent, and many other cultures, especially from Europe and Hispanica.
He's actually Asian. If you didn't know, Jesus is Asian.
What makes you think that? I didn't know that.
Well, he was born in Israel.
Yeah.
Correct.
So he's
Israel?
Middle Eastern.
No. The Middle East isn't a continent.
Asian.
He's Asian.
Which has the Middle East in it. When I think more of Asian people, I'm thinking more of Chinese.
I want to see him drawn as like Chinese with silk woolly hair. I want to see an Asian Jesus be drawn. I'm
pretty sure there's been many different types of Jesus is drawn. So the video stated itself that countries have painted their own version of Jesus. Like if you went to many Slovakian nations that are Christian, you'll see more of a Slavic Jesus. And Jesus looks like the majority of the population there, and the majority of the population here in the United States is white people, so Jesus will probably most likely be white.
There's census support, I actually put that, I think like 78% white.
Maybe.
Well, and
it's going down.
That depends on their definition of white too, because like Jews have flip-flopped on whether they're white or not. Not like religious Jews, but like birth Jews. Ethnically Jewish. They've bounced back and forth, and depending on what you read, they are or not white.
So Caucasian.
Yeah, Caucasian's a better word to use
for white people. So the video also claimed that in the United States, so the video claimed in quotes, in the United States, this idea of a European Jesus can have dangerous implication, end quote, and, start quote, white Jesus is a function of white supremacy, end quote. This video goes on to flawedly explain why white Jesus is so bad. And maybe hundreds of years ago, white Jesus was created to promote whites. and demote blacks.
So
Maybe back then.
based on that, they're saying that because
But-
the Mona Lisa was painted as a peach, with a peach skin tone, that is now the predominant race. Like, you're saying that because somebody's portrayal of something means that they're supporting that race's supremacy. So if I painted a black Jesus, I'm now supporting black supremacy? Or if
No,
I
you're
did,
not.
or if I did paint an Asian Jesus, I'd be supporting Asian supremacy?
Not today, but maybe back then, maybe.
Well, when it was originally
I'm just
portrayed, yeah, because we're not defending what white people had done.
We don't know if it's true or not, but the video said it, so it could be true, it could not be true.
We'll have to see their fact checking, but
Yeah.
I just don't see how you can look at say that this is somebody's portrayal of a god per se, and a godlike figure, a holy figure, and then say that because of that, because they portray him as white, brown hair, that now white, brown hair, brown eyes is the ideal human. That is the people who should be succeeding the most. And if you don't have white, brown hair, brown eyes, and a brown beard, then you're not right.
Yeah.
I don't see the connection they're trying to make there.
I mean, I have blue eyes, I'm dirty blonde. I don't care. I don't care what Jesus looks like. He's Jesus. He's our Savior.
Jesus just looks like Jesus.
So, let me finish my rebuttal here.
Okay.
So, the fact that they don't like the depiction of Jesus being white completely discredits them instantly. If Jesus was depicted in Western art as black, I bet the group wouldn't say crap. And yes, whites used to be a racist and a hateful group. That's true, that's history. But today, most whites see all skin colors as equal, and so does the majority of the population.
Most people in general.
Most people in general, no matter what your race is in the United States, they see all people of all races equal. There are a select few, including whites, blacks, Asians, every single race out there that thinks that their race is superior.
Okay, and with that actually ends our show. I want to thank you all for watching. This has been this is the 4th episode of Peeling Onions. The first episode on camera. We hope to do this more often and get you guys more of personal action with us. And I want to thank Colin for being on once again. And
Thank you for allowing me to be on here.
we'll see you guys the next time we're on.